Coaching and counseling are skills that SLPs need to know. And in this What I Didn't Learn in Grad School series, we're going to be talking to 3 SLP friends who have their own podcast. They're coming on my podcast, The Missing Link for SLPs, and we're going to talk about what they didn't learn in graduate school, involving coaching, counseling, and all those points in between. So let's welcome our guests. Welcome to the Missing Link for SLPs podcast. Have you ever wished you could go back and tell your younger self a way to do something better, or something that you've learned, or just those words of wisdom that you would have loved to have known when you first started? That's what this series is all about. I am interviewing guests and we reflect back on their words of wisdom and what they didn't learn in grad school. I think you'll be surprised by each one of these episodes. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Welcome, my friends, to this episode of The Missing Link for SLPs. And we are welcoming a trio of SLPs tonight. Would you guys like to take a moment to introduce yourselves? Brittany, would you like to start?
I will. So my name is Brittany, and I'm here with my 2 BFFs in the Cup of Counsel podcast. I live in Missouri, and I currently work at a children's hospital. I've been working I think all 3 of us are going on 12 years that we've been out. And I'm currently, like I said, in a children's hospital. I mostly do outpatient, but do cover inpatient when needed. I really love it. I have my wonderful husband and an 18-month-old son at home. So life is pretty good.
Sounds wonderful. That sounds like the setting that I come from in the hospital.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I love it. I love being a med SLP. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to hear from you, Amy. You're the one that reached out and said, we'd love to be on your podcast. And so you and I have talked a little bit, and we kind of come from the same hometown in Minnesota. Can you tell us about where you're practicing and what you do?
Sure. I'm Amy, and I, like Brittany said, have been out of grad school for about 12 years, and I am in the Brainerd Lakes area of Minnesota. And I've done private practice, but for the last almost 8 years, I've been with the school district and providing birth to 2 services in-home, birth to 2 services through the school district, and a little bit of preschool services as well. And I have a husband and 3 kids. The birthdays are all lining up pretty soon here, so the ages are going to change, but I'll hang on to 6, 4, and 2 for a little bit longer. That's early intervention is kind of my passion right now.
Oh, you work with the little ones.
Mm-hmm.
How exciting.
Yes.
Katie.
Yes. So I am Katie, and I live in Ohio. And right now I work in a preschool setting. It's an inclusion-based preschool. So we have kids on IEPs, and we have kids that are peer models. I love to tell the story of, I was an original parent of the program. I have 2 little boys. They are 16 months apart, so they are very close in age. Right now they are 4 and 6, which is like, I have a few months of them sounding like they're 2 years apart, but very much it's usually like they're 4 and 5 or they're 5 and 6. So they are very close in age, and they went to this program, and then their director reached out to me and said, we need a speech therapist, and I jumped on it. So I have been working there. But prior to that, I was an SLP full-time for a nonprofit organization, and I will always say that was an amazing experience and one of my favorite things I've ever done. But my life right now is in the preschool, and when I say I was somebody who was huge on never working in the schools, I tell you, I was like, I will never work in the schools. And now I work in the public school system in a preschool program, and I absolutely love it. So that's where I am now in Ohio in a preschool program, and I absolutely love my job right now.
That's great to hear, because when I work with students, I'll ask them, where do you want to go? And some are like, I never want to work in the schools. And so there's one of the first things right there, points of truth. You go through grad school and you think you're going to be on this one path, and sometimes you end up where you least expect.
It is. And that is something that we can talk about later, but that would be one of my points to what your topic is, that I feel very strongly about not limiting yourself in grad school, because there are a few programs who allow you to only choose one path and you don't have to do the other side of it. And in my experience in my career path, if I wouldn't have completed both internships, I would have never been in the position I'm in now. And I'm very grateful for the fact that young me was like, no, you don't know what you'll want in the future. So why not go ahead and complete both internships? And I was very blessed that I went to a graduate school who did not give me the option. They made you do both. As my undergrad program, I went to do for 2 different programs. My undergrad program gave you an option. My grad program that I ended up going to did not give you an option. So I did complete both, and I'm very grateful for that. So we can talk more about that later. But that would be definitely one of my big pieces of advice.
No, I would love to jump on this topic now. Not limiting yourself in grad school and in your career.
Right.
I got into voice work because I had somebody came up in my outpatient and she said, "Do you do voice work?" And I hadn't. So I went and I got the training, and voice is one of my favorite things now.
Yes.
Which is really needed, which is great.
It is extremely needed. And I can't really speak to the fact of, I don't know how many programs still do this. I'm somebody who went to school in multiple states. And so I bounced around with our degree. You can have, of course, your national licensure, and we are, we have our national branch of ASHA, but then you can be individually licensed on a state-to-state basis. And each state has their own requirements, and each program has their own requirements. And due to the fact that you have an individual licensure in each state, you have different things. So I'm somebody who currently works in Ohio, but did their undergrad in Kentucky and then did graduate work in Missouri. So from going from state to state, I would have never known when I was going to school that that would be an issue later in my career. And I have been out for 11 years. And I last year went to go work for the public schools, which I said I would never do, but my own children were in a preschool program who needed a speech therapist, and I was ready to go back to work. So I said, absolutely. If I was going to go back to any program, it would be this inclusion-based program that I fully believe in their principles. And so I went to go work there, and I needed my education licensure. And when I went to apply for it in the state of Ohio, they said, okay, sure, apply for it. You may be able to get it. But actually, we look at your credentials, and you went to school in Missouri for graduate school. So we don't know if you did the proper internships to have this. And I've been out of school for 11 years. I've been a practicing speech pathologist for 11 years. So I'm like, I've been working with students and people in an outpatient setting for like a long time. What do you mean I can't possibly get my license to work in the schools? And due to the fact that I went out of state for my graduate program, they were like, we need to see that you did the proper internship for it. So my Kentucky school, they gave you a choice if you wanted to do your school-based internship or not. My Missouri graduate program that I went to was like, no, you're required to do both to graduate. And I thank them every day, because when I was in grad school, like I said, I was like, no, I want to be a medical-based speech therapist. I never want to work in the schools. But I had to complete the school internship. So now down the road, I come into this opportunity that was amazing for me in my lifestyle. And I was able, long story short, to prove to them, nope, grad school made me do both. And I was able to prove to them from my director of my graduate school, they were like, yep, she has all the credentials. And the Ohio board eventually gave me my education license to work in the schools. But I'm grateful that was the case. And I would urge any person to pursue any opportunity that you are given, because you don't know what's going to happen down the road.
Well said. Amy, what about you? Words to your younger self.
So I think my big one regarding this topic of like things that weren't covered maybe in grad school, or things I had to learn as I went, and things that maybe would have been more helpful in grad school, would have been knowing that I would need the skills to teach other adults, not necessarily adults that I'm working with in therapy sessions, but to teach parents or caregivers or even other professionals that I'm working with, learning how to coach another grown-up and how to work as a team. I think that those are skills that take time to develop, and the comfort level of explaining something to a parent and coaching them along, like, okay, now why don't you try it? That's super uncomfortable. And it takes a lot of practice to feel comfortable to tell a parent, this is what I want you to try. And why don't you show me, and to walk them through the steps, versus just taking the lead and, waving the magical speech wand to fix the issue. That I think is what a lot of people have the perception of. But doing early intervention, I've definitely come to know that it's so much more important to give the parent that control and give the parent that power to make the change in their child. And so I think that's something that's been an ongoing learning process, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, as our district has shifted models more to a coaching model and less of a bring a bag and do speech therapy and leave. That's something that was not ever discussed in grad school, and that's something I'm continuing to learn.
And that coaching is just emerging as just such an effective model. I remember I've been in the field a bit longer than 11 years, but parents would come and okay, go with your speech teacher, or in the school. I've never worked in the schools, but they come to the outpatient clinic, and the parents would wait in the waiting room. They do your session time, and you come back. Okay, this is what we did. Go home. Homework and coaching and carryover and generalization. All of those things now are recognized as such an important piece. And you're right. They're just gaining in that need to know how to use those skills. How did you learn your coaching skills? How did you become comfortable?
Well, my district has taken on an initiative from the state of Minnesota. It's changed acronyms over the years. So now it's equality. Equality evidence-based quality intervention practices. EQUIP is the current model. It was family guided routines-based intervention that we were doing. It's all kind of the same thing, but basically I've been put through a series of trainings over the course of the last about 4 years from the Minnesota Department of Education. And so that has been a big piece of it. We also at our district are starting a peer coaching model where people are getting trained as coaches. And so a teacher or another SLP might observe me or observe a video of me coaching a parent and then provide feedback. And so there's that process too, to kind of reach fidelity with that and to better your practices. So it's an ongoing thing. I think the hardest part is learning to ask reflective questions of the parents. That's kind of a big one, versus telling the parent, like, I know exactly how to get the child to, if the goal is I want them to request more. I know in my brain the steps that I would take, but it's supposed to be less about me being the I'm the expert, but I'm supposed to be providing my knowledge to the parent versus telling them exactly what to do. And so asking them some of those questions, like, how do you think this could look? Or what time of the day do you think would be best? Versus me, old me would just be like, when you're doing snack time, you could do this, this, this. And instead it's supposed to be more like, what time of the day is the most difficult when you feel like there could be an opportunity for communication? And it's hard to shift because it takes more time to do it that way. But in doing it that way, the parent is a little bit more in control. And then they have more ownership and more buy-in, and they're more likely to carry over some things if they feel like they came up with the idea versus this professional told me that this is what they should do. And they're not that, they don't know my kid and those kinds of things. So I've seen the benefit of those things, but it's a hard shift and I'm still figuring it out.
That's a good compare contrast, where the old me and now the coaching me with this new skill set. And I bet you see just more confidence with the parents as a communication partner. Yeah.
And I think that figuring out how to have interactions with different types of adults is also, that just is kind of a learn as you go thing. And some parents are very receptive and easy to break through, and you can find a common interest, and it's not even about speech therapy or about, their kid, but you might be looking around their house like, what can I comment on that we could have a comment, because you need to establish a rapport. And if you don't have rapport and you just come in with, I have all these tools and I have all these checklists and I have all these resources, it's intimidating for a parent. So I think that's something that also is different, that maybe isn't not a lot of time is spent learning those skills, and it's kind of a learn as you go kind of a thing. Like if you take the time to establish rapport, the first couple of sessions, you might be talking about Game of Thrones or like their camping trips or whatever you notice that you can like comment on and have some knowledge about that they're interested in. I mean, it might not be full speech therapy focus, but then when you've gained trust and you have a little bit of a relationship, they're going to be more invested because they feel like you're invested in them. Yeah.
More buy-in.
This is something that I feel like this is a trend right now. Like say something that's unpopular that people will not like to hear, but I will be the one to say it. I feel like the thing our grad schools are missing that we have learned while doing this podcast, and we've had a lot of aha moments of like, we have felt this way, but we didn't know how to put it in words. And I wish they would teach this from the get-go. Like we've talked a lot about the savior complex. Like you don't have to come in and feel like you're the one who's going to fix everything. And it is your job and your pressure to fix everything. Like it is okay to have the idea of like, you are a tool that this family is going to use to help them reach a goal with their own child. And I think that would take, for me personally, when I have always felt that way, but when someone finally said it, I was like, that's exactly what I want to be. Like, I don't want to be, I feel like there's so much pressure in grad school of like, you've learned this, how to do this, and you've learned that this is your job and this is what you have to do. Yes, that is 100% true. However, like you are a tool to reach a certain goal. You are not the one that's going to come in and fix everything. You see a kid for 45 minutes a week or whatever you've set for their treatment plan. And it is and Amy on her topic, I don't want to steal it, but I feel like it had with her parent coaching, we've had a few conversations, and Brittany as well with her working in the hospital of like, we need to get the family to buy in and feel like they are not on the outside of this. Like, okay, thanks for bringing your kid. I got it. And then there's a lot of pressure on us to fix their expectation or like to reach their expectations. It is like a buy-in of like, we are a team. You come and bring them to me for 45 minutes a week, and I want to show you what I'm doing. And I would like to make you a part of this team so that you feel like you have the power to then implement this or do this at your own home with your own child or whoever it may be. And I feel like personally, the other two may not feel this way, but I feel like personally that whole concept has been really important when I have students who shadow me or that, listen, you have this gift. You went to school and you chose this profession. And I truly in my soul feel like this is the best profession in the world. Other people may disagree, but I feel like this is an amazing profession. And you are dedicating a lot of time and energy into this profession and wanting to help people. So go help people. Give people the power to help them understand how they can help their loved ones and be a tool in their communication journey. But it is not the pressure of you to make them do something. That's just my personal.
I love that because I've had students in my office who are just in tears because they can't quote unquote fix or figure something out, or they don't feel like their session went perfectly. And arriving in our sessions, it's like Maya Angelou says, we do the best we can with what we know. And when we know better, we do better. And this is the journey of becoming a speech pathologist is we do the best we can, but the onus is not on us to fix or to save. It's to do the best that we can for that day and then let go with grace at the end of the day, knowing that we did our best or we did good enough. And we are part of a team and part of We don't have to carry it all ourselves.
Yeah,
So-
that was going to be mine if we ever got to my before and after, if these two would be quiet.
Please, I'm sorry. The conversation.
No,
got
this
going.
is historically how it goes. Yeah.
How it goes, yeah. Unless someone's not in a great mood.
So sorry, Brittany, tell us your advice to your younger self. Your before
I was
and
going to
after.
say the exact same thing that Joyner just said, is but a little bit different. So not limiting yourself, but also knowing how important your OT and PT and ABA and teachers and all the other people are in your world. I feel like in school, we're so honed in on like, write the proper plan of care and get your goals exactly right. And I would kind of take that with me into my sessions and think, yeah, I have this savior complex, which the three of us, like we just said, newly discovered what that is. And it took, 12 years for us to realize, oh, this is the pressure we've been feeling. But knowing that you are a full team. So I often feel like, especially in the outpatient setting, you can turn into almost like a case manager, and you realize all these other supports that a patient maybe is not getting. So you feel like you have to be the one to set all that up, when really it's like the primary care should be doing all that. But you are a good tool to communicate with these families on the other supports that they need. But just know that your OTs and PTs and ABAs are all there to support this patient also. So utilizing them appropriately is huge, and a huge part of therapy in general. And I feel like that's not something that we talk about too much. I do remember speaking about it a little bit in grad school and undergrad, but obviously in the hospital setting, it's a major part. Constant collaboration with all the entities. So,
Brittany, can you tell us how teamwork works in the medical setting, and how you work with one another and refer and pull in and collaborate?
Yeah. So I feel like, at least in the outpatient setting, a lot of times our initial referral is for speech, because the patient goes to their 12-month well visit or 15-month well visit, and they meet with the doctor for a little bit, and they mention, oh, they're not saying much, or they're just saying one or two words. So I feel like in our setting, speech often gets the first referral. I don't know if it's the same for these two, but then we we see the child and we maybe suspect something else going on. So if we see any sensory needs, running all over the room, constant toe walking, parents reporting, picky eating, not liking bath time, inconsistent eye contact, all that kind of stuff, then we'll definitely discuss. Well, we always say, the proper way is talk to your primary care about occupational therapy. I feel like OT referral is probably the biggest one that we do. And then occasionally physical therapy, if we see any needs or tone issues for that. But it's really case by case, and it's educating yourself and knowing what is out there, especially wherever you work. Like, there's so many resources where I am. Every single thing is at our fingertips. And I feel like a lot of times you can really get stuck in like just the speech aspect. And maybe that's not the best thing for them. You need to know what's all at the hospital and what they can receive, and make sure you discuss it appropriately with the parent and the primary care, making sure the doctor is involved in what you saw and all of that too.
So teamwork, comprehensive.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Constant teamwork.
Mm-hmm. We have time for one more question. Our time has flown by fast tonight, and it's about continuing education and lifelong learning. Brittany or Amy or Katie, one of you like to start with that topic, the importance of lifelong learning?
I think Katie and I've had enough airtime. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
go ahead. Brittany, you go ahead. I think we've all talked about this, and I think we all have similar view
I think
on
we all
this.
feel the same way about this for sure. This is a big one, because I feel like when I can't remember the first course I ever went to, but you go and you drink the Kool-Aid. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to change every patient's life.
You're like amped when you leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love about CEs. I love taking a CE because I feel super refreshed coming back to work after.
Yeah.
However, you should never, ever go and take a course and then only do that approach.
Mm-hmm.
And think that you're all of a sudden an expert in that approach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have interns all the time, and my biggest, I give like the list of the top 5 CEs that I love, and just tell them like, these are going in your toolbox, and tell parents that, because you do get parents who come in and say, I heard you have a certification or training in this, and that's what we want. And I say, well, I've gone to the training and I have that. You're right, but that's not the only thing I do. So go to as many CEs as you can and learn as much as you can, and always be open. You do not know everything, and you never will in this. So,
and it's a constant, like, even though you got your degree, you got your degree, and that's awesome. But I think I was under the impression of like, once you become a speech therapist, great, I'm a speech therapist. It is constantly, no matter how long you've been in this field, it is a lifelong learning lesson. Like, you will constantly learn new things, and you will evolve, and you'll try to do new things. Just like you said, Maddie, like you chose to do voice. Like, that's awesome. And like Brittany said, you have it in your toolbox once you decide to go into that. And that is something that you have as a therapist after that.
I want to just add one more thing that the 3 of us have talked about before a little bit on the podcast. And I know we have it as like an upcoming topic that we wanted to address, but since starting the podcast, we've been more active on like Instagram and following different SLPs on Instagram. And that is super overwhelming. It's fantastic. There's great resources, but it can be overwhelming. And I think what we've noticed just kind of observing is there's some, bashing of different courses and therapy techniques and things like that. And it's really disheartening and frustrating, because I've taken, a bunch of CEUs, and I use on a daily basis strategies or tools from these different courses of people who don't agree with each other. And I combine approaches of, if the person who did the training knew that I was using this other person's, like, this piece of their training mixed with their, they would be like, oh my goodness. But I think you need those, like, a variety. You need to have that knowledge to know what's out there, because one thing isn't going to work for every case. So,
and we're not robots. The speech pathologists, it's not like, okay, this child or this patient has this deficit, therefore we're going to do this, this, this. Speech pathology is an art. It's not a science. And we need to take the courses, learn the objectives, and we also need to learn how to critically think, problem solve, and apply to that individual client or patient that we're working with. And so, like you said, Amy, take the bits and pieces, pull them all together to create the best plan of treatment for the person we're working with. And that's where the magic, if there is magic, that's where the success comes from, is when you get that skill, that experience, and that ability to apply. And then the extra pieces of the special sauce of the rapport building, the conflict resolution, the coaching, all of those things that make us successful.
I love that you called it an art, because I always say that too. It's language therapy is an art. All of it is an art. So I like hearing that someone else is saying that as well.
It is an art, and we practice it.
And you're ironically talking to 3 people who went to the same graduate program of your Masters of Arts instead of Masters of Science.
Me too. I'm a Masters of Arts, not Masters of Science.
So there you go. You're a Master of Arts.
So before we jump off, we're going to put all of this in the show notes, and your bios and headshots and everything are going to be there. But can you tell our listeners where to find you and tell us about your podcast?
Sure. So our podcast started because my mom sent me a text message and asked me to call her during the workday. And I thought it was an emergency, and it wasn't. She just had this idea out of nowhere, like, hey, you and Brittany and Joyner should start a podcast. And I was like, oh, this is so random, and brought it up to them. And Brittany and I were on board. Joyner wasn't, but here she is. And
which is not a weird thing for this friendship.
No, it's pretty typical. Yeah.
Those 2 dragging me into stuff. So, yeah.
Right. So we've known each other for almost 12, well, no, more than that, because we went to grad school together. So probably about closer to 13, 14 years. And we've been long distance friends, because obviously we don't live in the same state. We have matching schwa tattoos that we got together. Anyway, and so where was I going with all of this? Oh, so we started our podcast about March of 2021, March of last year, and it's been so much fun. And we have kind of shifted directions, and we are kind of a mixed bag. We have had several SLP guests on to talk about different things. We've had a working mom life coach on. We are interviewing another person tomorrow about more like body image and graceful aging in your 30s and those kinds of things. And so we're kind of like, and then we also have a lot of episodes of just the three of us talking about, funny girl trip stories or more serious topics. We have a couple developmental episodes where we talk about speech and feeding and language development. So we're kind of all over the place right now, but we're coming up on a year. And we're just having fun with it. So we can be found on any platform. Cup of Counsel Podcast is the name of our podcast. And we also have an Instagram. It's at Cup of Counsel Podcast. And we also have a Facebook group, the same thing. And yeah, we'd love it if people would check it out.
It sounds fun. Sounds very conversational.
It is. We have fun. We give each other a lot of grief. And we have what I'd like to think are funny, unique friendship stories, because we do see each other about once a year. And so that involves going on a trip together, and usually, situations ensue. And so we have some good unique stories that we like to share. So yeah, and we've been able to connect with each other more frequently this way too. So that's been nice.
Podcasts are fun. I'm having so much fun with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to send, I am sure people are going to want to see that tattoo, that schwa tattoo.
Oh yeah.
Would you send a picture of that? And Brittany,
Yes.
Would you send your top 5 courses?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Any final words? I know people are just going to love this.
I could share really quick. So the schwa tattoo, just so it makes more sense. We got it on a girls' trip together because schwa, obviously everyone listening knows that schwa is unstressed. And so we are unstressed when we're together. We always say, like, this is home. We feel like at ease. We talk about literally everything you could think of, and we're super comfortable together. So whenever we do meet up, it's like all the stress of regular life is gone. And so we decided to get that matching tattoo a few years ago. And then it ties into our podcast logo as well, because we added a little cup handle to the schwa. And so, because we also say, it fills our cup then when we're together. So that's kind of how that all comes together. But there's some symbolism behind all of it. Yeah. And we explain that in some of our earlier episodes too.
And Maddie, you will be receiving a fun little mug with our schwa symbol on it.
Yeah.
We should put a picture of that on there too. That would be great. Thank you. This was so much fun. Cup of Counsel, thank you for coming on and sharing your time.
Thank you for having us.
I hope today's conversation has created some aha moments for you and motivated you to become a better SLP, continuing to connect some of those missing links between what you know and how to use that knowledge. Thank you for downloading the Missing Link for SLP's podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, I'd love you to subscribe, rate it, and leave a short review. Also, please share an episode with a friend. Together we can raise awareness and help more SLPs find and connect those missing links and get the information needed to help them feel confident in their patient care every step of the way. Follow me on Instagram and join the Fresh SLP community on Facebook. Show notes are always available, so come learn more at freshslp.com. Let's make those connections. You got this.